Hey everybody, my name is Sean. Let's try and get this camera. I'm an American teacher here, American English teacher here in China. I've been in China about 10 years. I spent the last year and so far this year in Fujian province, but I've worked and lived in many different parts of China. Currently I work at a primary school, a middle school. Those schools are still temporarily suspended until further notice. I was given next week as a prospective date, but that's not been confirmed. In fact, what I'm hearing is that they don't know when school is going to start. Hopefully by the end of the month, because I am certainly feeling the feeling of anticipation. Certainly, I think anybody who works a job feels more secure when they are doing their job than when they are sort of in the uncertainty of doing their job. I have a contract, and I am staying within the provisions and stipulations of my contract, and honoring and respecting that degree. So I'm not working outside of my contract. And by that I mean online for different companies or any sort of service. I did offer my services to teach online. I had heard that some of the teachers at the primary school were doing online classes, and I offered my services for that. But they did not contend that they needed my services to do that. So basically, I am remaining here on a retainer at this point until school commences. I am getting paid my full salary still, so there's been no breach. There was a slight delay, but that is within the provisions of my contract. It was like a 3-day late payment provision in there. So no, there's been no breaches, and neither I nor my employer has decided to claim force majeure at this point. So we're proceeding. I feel more secure now because I was able to secure my visa. That was an issue where I just felt a lot of the obstacles that were being created was going to make that less and less certain. So during that period, I was very sort of nervous and taking precautionary measures in case I had to leave the country, trying to secure the means to do that. But we have moved forward with that. I'm currently waiting to get my visa back. And like I said, they continue to pay me, so I feel a little more reassured at this point. The situation here is that things are getting in China, or in my city, as far as I know. They're returning to normalcy, but things are running slower. Like most businesses are open, most operations are accessible. Buses are running, the stores are all up, the banks are all running, people are circulating, certainly again. They have not implemented the health code here. You don't see that, but you do. There's still temperature checks at most sort of stores and things like that. Malls, going into places like that. There's temperature checks. Taobao is running again, but really only the big delivery services are providing right now. You don't see. I do see the little sort of tuk-tuks running here and there. There's a lot of delivery services, and people are always going to be looking for the cheaper one. But basically, it appears that just the bigger ones are operating at this point. That being said, the problems with Taobao right now is that like a lot of stores don't have what they are posting online. So you'll end up buying this is kind of an ethical thing. So instead of and taking down the ad, they leave it up, and so you find yourself buying, in particular, things like thermometers, anything kind of associated with the outbreak of the COVID-19. My name is COVID, man. You guys are insensitive bastards. That's been this contention about that name there. And I was like, yeah, but COVID's a pretty cool name. My name is COVID, man. I'm the most popular guy on YouTube. You don't think about me. No, nobody hates me. So anyway, so those items on Taobao, mask and things like that, they're still on there, but they don't have them. So what you'll end up doing is you'll pay for it, and then you'll be sitting around like, why isn't, usually it's like within a day, it's it's out for delivery, or they've initiated the delivery service. If somebody's picked it up and it's in transit. But what's happening is that they just they take your money and then nothing happens, and so you have to go back and contact the seller and say like, well, is this going to be sent soon? And they're like, oh, we don't really have it we're waiting to get it ourselves. And you're like, well, then why'd you take my money? Why are you advertising it? Fortunately, and this has happened a number of times, certain things, like I wanted to get a thermometer, and I found myself buying 3 or 4 of them before I was like, these people don't have them, and so now I gotta get my refund. Everybody's been good about giving me the refund, except I have one that's kind of holding off on giving my money back. But I just kind of feel like, well, then you shouldn't be if you don't have it, you shouldn't be taking people's money for it. Don't wait till you have it in stock and then sell it. So what happens on Taobao is you have to take an extra measure. You have to contact them before you buy things now and say like, do you really have this? And that's just kind of unnecessary. That's not a good business acumen. That's what's going on in Taobao. That never happened before. For the most part, you would buy something and within a day, by the end of the day, it was in transit. But now you're buying things that they might not have. And so that's Taobao right now. What else I want to talk about? What have I been up to outside of that? Well, I kind of do my exercises. I do my training here. The Nike app has been a windfall for me. I kind of enjoy it now, having that sort of routine workouts. I do my walk here. There's a walk here that I do. It's about a 4-mile walk, and it goes up around this kind of area that used to be, it might have been a factory or something, and they kind of plowed it all under it. Now there's just kind of a lot of old ladies going down there and gardening. I would say a lot of the vegetables that go to the wet market here come out of this area. Perhaps the other day I saw one of those women that have those. A lot of the older ladies here, you'll see them with their backs hunched over. Obviously, because the strain they carry those bamboo poles when they carry their vegetables to market. They have 2 baskets hanging over a bamboo pole. I have one of these things. I have one myself, and so most of their life they've probably been carrying weight on their shoulders with these bamboo poles, and that has caused a crook in their back. And a lot of the old ladies you'll see, that becomes irreversible. If it is reversible, they don't have the money to afford the procedure to make it reversible. Their backs are crooked or have a crook in them, and so I was walking down the doing my circumference, and I saw this old lady with a crook in her back, and she was kind of rolling this rock just really slowly, and then she'd look back and look around for somebody, and it appeared to me that she was looking for help, because I just can't imagine her it was a real big stone, and so I was walking by and I was trying to see what she was doing, and then I went down there and I picked up the stone for her, and then she wanted 3 or 4 of them, so I moved those stones for her, and she wanted to give me water, and I said, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. And I went back into doing my. I kind of felt bad about it. I felt bad that I didn't necessarily complete what she was trying to do. I kind of felt bad walking away. But I didn't really know what she was trying to, or if she knew, or if she was, if that's, I would have put the stones in wherever she wanted me to place them. She just wanted me to kind of put them here, but it was obviously that's not what she had. Something in mind what she wanted to do with them, and I would just as soon put them to accomplish that for her, because she shouldn't be doing that kind of work. But she just wanted me to put them all at this one location, and then I guess that was enough. She offered me water. I said, no, thank you. And I went back to walking away, and like I said, I kind of felt bad walking away, knowing that the job necessarily wasn't done. And but I was thinking, like, why? Gee, these kids have kids. They have like grandchildren that are like 8 years old, or 10 years old, 11 years old, and they're just sitting around in front of TVs or just playing around. Like when I was a kid, that would be something I would be doing. I'd be out there with my grandparents, moving those rocks, and kind of I feel that's. And I know this is like, it's almost like it's part of their thinking with the Cultural Revolution, when Mao Zedong sent all the young people, from the cities out into the countryside to do this kinds of work. I don't know. I don't think, I understand the thinking, and I definitely agree with that thinking. Like, yeah, you got kids that, this is like good learning for them. It's good exercise for them. It's helping their, people who need the help most. So why aren't those kids out there helping their grandmothers and grandfathers doing this gardening and stuff? It's actually quite rewarding and enjoyable to a great extent. Looking back on my upbringing, I'm glad I had that time with my grandparents and my parents, and I think it instilled in me sort of a system of values that I think are very good survival, very good survival values, just in sort of relation to what work entails and what you can learn from doing that kind of work. And it certainly made me healthier, I think, in the long run. And so yeah, I understand that was kind of like the concept behind the Cultural Revolution, of sending everybody out of the cities, because I imagine they saw the same thing happening. Like, why aren't these kids doing, these things that kind of instilled in us this sense of, these values which are healthy and sort of that we find very rewarding to our people, our person, our character, our rationale for making decisions. Maybe it doesn't work on that level. Maybe not, as a policy, probably not a good way to proceed it. But it's really up to families to say, like, hey, like with my father and mother, like, you're going to spend Sunday with your grandparents and helping your grandfather or something, like burn branches or cut trees or things like that. We did that a lot in our house. We lived out in the wilderness. We lived out in sort of the countryside ourselves. So that was, just part of it. When school was out, that's what you were working at home. You were clearing forests. You were building stone walls. You were cutting trees for the wood furnace. You were doing things like that. It wasn't like vacation. You're sitting in front of TV playing with toys and playing video games or anything like that. That's relatively a new urban sort of lifestyle. But anyway, yeah, I was just like, why aren't those kids out there doing that, just playing the game? It's not like, it's not like the grandparents wouldn't be like, okay, that's something that kid can't do, and I'll do it for him. But like, you can do this little, you can dig the dirt here, something like here. You can plant these vegetables, or you can do a little bit of this or that. Make yourself useful, maybe learn a few things. And And the other day, I did actually saw one of the younger boys out there, at least one young boy out there helping his grandmother doing the gardening. So I thought that was a good thing to see. And certainly, if I had kids, I'd be like, no, guess what you do? You're your grandma today, you know, and you know, because I don't want to see just sitting here, kind of being so dependent on sort of on other people's perceptions of the world. You know, you need to establish your own perception of the world, and this is what it is. You know, it's not gossip and rumor. That's something. You know, and a lot of what you're growing dependent on is just that. You're growing dependent on other people's projections of their world, of what is important, and you need some independent thinking. You know. So anyway, so I helped that old lady, and you know I haven't really seen her recently, so I'm a bit concerned. I hope she's okay, and I hope I helped her. You know. What else? I changed the sink here. My faucet in my kitchen had just before the outbreak, it started to leak. And so it was a situation where I was like, I don't really want people coming in here, you know, like if I notify the landlord about this leak, he's going to have to come bring people in here, and really people aren't supposed to be sort of commingling. You know, you're supposed to reduce that, so it kind of stuck with this leak right now. It's just it was up in the faucet. It was in a welded out part of the faucet that you couldn't just replace. You had to replace the whole faucet. Fortunately, I had the tools to do it. Fortunately, it can all be done with basically an adjustable wrench. And I have an adjustable wrench, and be able to run down to, once the store is open, I was able to get a faucet. And I fixed that. Not expensive. I was happy to do it. It's kind of stuff I should be doing at my house right now. I kind of feel my own house in America. But you know, I got that done. What else is going on? My computer. This has been a huge windfall, and this is why everything is running. There's been a huge, massive sort of. What do you want to say? There's been a major sort of change in my ability to work on my PC. For the last 2 years, it's been my computer's been maxed out. You know? So it's been the most frustrating. My entire sort of psychological sort of approach to having to work on the computer was diminished to an extensive degree ever since I kind of, you know, I could not get things done. And when I did get them done, it was just like in the nick of time. We're talking like if I moved my cursor, it would take a minute for it to sort of process that movement. And I found myself like spending entire days trying to get like maybe what I was used to when my computer was working. You know, when I first had acquired this MacBook, it used to take like, you know, seconds, but now it was taking like 20 minutes, 30 minutes just to get this one little sort of, you know, if I had to move a picture in a PowerPoint, it was like spinning ball, spinning ball, spinning ball, spinning ball, spinning ball, move, you know. It couldn't process Bluetooth. Bluetooth wasn't working correctly, you know. It would just drop the connection. And so if I had my USB ports sort of maxed out, I had to figure out which one I was going to disconnect so I could connect you had to put the USB connection back for the mouse to get it to work again. Just so much frustration was associated to that. So, you know, this was finally this year I was kind of exploring my options, you know. I didn't really want to buy a new MacBook because I don't like the new MacBooks. For the most part, I'm hearing bad things about them, and that touch bar just seems like a silly addition that is just unnecessary. So that was an option that I was, you know, considering, but I didn't really want to pursue it because what I was hearing is that actually my model is one of the more ideal models because of its ability to upgrade. You can actually work on it, and but I wasn't really familiar with what that entailed. And I was finding out that information kind of later in my process of exploring options. Like I said, and most of my time was being sort of utilized by just trying to get things done for my classes, for my lessons. And so I didn't really have a lot of time to explore anything. You know, everything was working very slow, and the idea of, you know, clicking on a website took hours for it to sort of download. And it was a nightmare. It was like having your legs in casts, you know, like or like it was like having a crook in your neck, and you're always trying to do a workout, you know. It's like you're trying to do squat thrusts, and or like you're in boot camp or something like that, right? And you got a crook in your neck, and you're like, all right, you got to do all it. So you're just like everything was going very slow. So anyway, I had the chance to sort of explore my options there. Another option I was kind of considering was building a computer, but I knew I really didn't. You know, there's people here that you could accomplish that with. I'm not really familiar with where that part of town in Chuanzhou is really right now. There's usually a big part of town that's just kind of all where you go to get your computer fixed, and there's all kind of computer parts. And I haven't really found that in Chuanzhou as of yet. But I know it's out there. I'm pretty sure it's out there. But I don't have the communication skills to really sort of get involved in what kind of specifications I want in that computer. So I didn't really see building a computer here as something I could do here. It would be something I'd have to wait, go back to the United States to accomplish. But I'm still intrigued by it. You know, it's still something I like. I have strong considerations of doing. Especially watching like Corridor Crew and their equipment, and seeing. I know that's the process. They actually have a few companies that they recommend or that endorse their channel. That it kind of takes tentative steps to look into. But I found the best option for me was going to be to upgrade, since this MacBook is ideal for this, and it's a very easy process. You know, it's a very simple process of just kind of. You just take the back off and you're popping in something new. It doesn't even, no soldering involved or anything like that. It's just, unplugging and plugging basically. And you can upgrade your HD, you can upgrade your memory, RAM, and wow, all I can say, I did both of those tasks, and now my computer is just amazing right now. It hasn't worked this fast since I purchased it. And it's going to take me a while to get used to running again. My legs were in casts for the last two years in terms of working on this machine, working with this equipment, and now I have to get used to walking and running again. And I can feel like my mind trying to figure out, what it's going to be doing, what it's going to do now that it's reacquired this ability, this mobility. So but the thing is, it took so long. I mean, you watch channel, it's really not just the physicality and mechanics of doing it, making the upgrade was very simple. It takes 5 minutes basically. But the operational aspects, getting my HD cloned turned into an immensely frustrating experience because, I wanted to back up my I had an HD that was maxed out also, so I had to get a new HD, external drive. I had an external drive that was maxed out, and I had to get another external drive, so I got another external drive, and then I wanted to back it up with the time machine. Well, what happened there was the time machine, it was taking it was a 7-day process to get this thing backed up, and it was one of those processes like maybe 3 days would go by, and then suddenly an error would occur, and you'd have to start back at day one, and it was just so frustrating because all during this time you kind of have to monitor it. You have to because an error can occur so easily, and apparently they happen pretty frequently, at least in my circumstances. So I had to stick around, it wasn't like I couldn't just walk away from it necessarily. Yeah, and this has been my experience over the last 2 years. I'm waiting for something to happen. I can't really leave because I have to monitor the situation. So that was extremely frustrating, and I finally found out the best way of getting that HD copy or clone was just to it was a super duper program, super duper software for cloning that's available free. Downloaded that, and once again, I'm also struggling with VPNs here. I was able to get that downloaded and cloned, and now I have this immense capacity on my computer again. So I'm trying to recalibrate myself to my equipment. That being said, another problem I found arising was Microsoft Office. I had been aware with the new operating system that Microsoft Office had kind of switched to a subscription format, and that's something I despise. That I feel it's unethical. I think it's like almost like you're enslaved, especially with a software that's so integral to working on a laptop. Or doing it's just an essential software. And for them to switch over to that subscription format is just so, I just find it so unethical. I was always inclined to just buy the hard copy, and you would be working on that version for as long as you cared to work on that version. You weren't being forced out, and this is a big problem of the information age, is that they can erase information, and say, oh, everything starts here, and it starts with these people, even though all that information before, and whatever tricks or, whatever was happening over there, and people were using to their, were using to sort of give themselves an edge, all that stuff, that's all done. Now it starts here, and you all have that edge. You all have that edge now, So that's what I'm dealing with Microsoft Office. It's really, it's a way of sort of, you're wiping out people's expertise. People who have created have created a system that is profitable for them, or they've created a sort of an ability. They've developed abilities that are profitable for them, and you're just saying, boop, erase it all, it's done. Everything starts here, and it starts with these people who we've selected to carry on with our interests, to sort of, project our interests better than those people here who sort of, these people, it wouldn't have been possible with, So anyway, I don't like subscription services, especially in terms of things like, software like Microsoft Office. And that being said, I was very concerned about when I switched this over, was that going to be effective? And yes, it was. Fortunately, I still have the operations of my old services, but I would have to, either redo my time machine, or I would have to reinstall the old HD to work on those older versions. And also, I found out that they can just invalidate your operational keys at this point. So they can lock you out of even the hard copies at this point. All very unethical. And I would, as a governing institution, I would certainly say, no, can't do that. I'd certainly put regulations on that. And so anyway, I found myself, I had to purchase the new version. Fortunately, I didn't have to purchase a subscription. They still do offer a sort of permanent copy of it. Though once again, it's all at this point, it's all sort of contingent on their activation key. They can always invalidate your activation key and say, "Oh, this version doesn't work anymore. You got to buy a new version." I think that's a really sort of that downside is going to at some point outweigh the upsides of it. I mean, there is an upside to it. Now I have this new version, and I have the capacity to do everything. I have all bag of new tricks, and I have to get used. I have to figure out what to do with these new tricks. So somebody just hands you a bag. You're a magician. somebody has you a bag of tricks and you're kind of going through. It's like, how does this trick work? You know, so you're trying to figure it out and how to use it. So that's where I'm at with Microsoft right now, and that's going to take me a while to learn. You know, I'm excited, and I'm a little bit like, well, you know, but what I used to do was pretty well. I did it pretty well, and now everybody else does it just as well as I had spent all this time working to do it well. You know, I have new Microsoft. Let me take a look at. So yeah, what I've been doing here is I've been doing things like I started to develop just kind of these reading. I use the ESL library subscription service, and so I'm kind of taking. They have beginner readings, things about sharks, and one about Dragon Boat Festival, and just making sort of these mini programs with some games. This is still working on this one. Putting a few of those together to keep myself occupied, to build up material in this downtime. Like I said, maybe I didn't say so far, but school is still suspended. I'm still waiting for word on school to commence. I had offered my service online services, but they didn't find, they haven't sort of informed me that that's necessary. So in the meantime, I'm trying to sort of just kind of continually prepare myself for when school commences, and give myself some materials that I might be able to use in the classroom, or use in certain circumstances, or even share at some point. So I'm doing these little reading things, you know, just a little beginner level. I work mostly with, you know, beginner students in elementary school and middle school. So doing maybe a beginner and an intermediate versions of these readings, and just a short little reading, some exercises, some games, and just kind of building up a little library of those right now. I also did, you know, I was able to get the textbooks and did some of the work, some lessons for my first couple of weeks of classes. I don't want to get too involved with that because it's hard to know what's gonna, you know, what kind of pacing what school's gonna be like when I get back to it. So I don't really I gave myself a couple weeks of lessons work there. Otherwise, I just kind of want to build some material that I can use in any sort of scenario, because I don't know, I might find myself in, you know, unanticipated sort of formats, you know, or dealing with unanticipated classes. Like I said, let's just move on. What else is going on? Taking a look at the news. Let's see here. Did I talk about how things are? I think where are we at the time? 3 seconds. I guess I talked about that. Other things I figured out the bus system finally. You know, for the longest while I was depending on coins, and everyone was swiping. You know, it becomes swiping their scan codes on their phones to pay for the bus. But I was always kind of struggling with that, because it was always kind of manifested the idea of you need a Chinese ID to sort of register for that system. But I kind of finally figured out how to use my Alipay account to verify it, and so now I have the ability now, if I choose, to pay for things like public transportation by just using a scan code. And I find it's actually cheaper. You'll save a little bit like a yen by using the scan code. But I still find the idea of, I still keep some coins just in case, if it's quick. It's a lot quicker still to just drop your coins and go through. But I was losing money, that way. And certainly in a time where you're looking. I think it's ancillary. It's definitely not a measure that you would consider as being a primary incentive for using for not using coins is that you might get a disease from somebody's using coin. What else is? So let's take a look at the news. Once again, this whole stock market crash and all that is definitely this is all affecting me. This all seems to transpire in a very sort of personal way. If you were sort of in terms of the stock market and credit ratings, I found my credit rating being sort of attacked. I found my stock market, my investments being attacked all at the same time. It was particularly egregious to have your credit rating sort of being attacked when, like, I had just paid off loans, and suddenly my credit rating went down, like almost 20 points, because they recalibrated the criteria, and I was like, what? That's profoundly irrational. It was a profoundly irrational response to what really had been transpiring in my credit. It didn't reflect the progress I was making, and it sort of focused on those few elements that were they changed the criteria to focus on the few elements where they could sort of downgrade my credit. So I was pretty angered by that. I felt it very personal, because my credit is still really good, but to lose 20 points after having made progress, paying off loans, it just makes no rational sense to me, And it all sort of transpired along with oh yeah, we're going to try and sort of whatever gains you're making, we're going to try and sort of cripple those gains, and certainly with the investments, that's all kind of occurring now, and I find it just sort of egregious, very egregious. Because one of the big things about this epidemic, this pandemic, is that it's certainly grounds for any sort of authoritarian sort of mechanism. And I mentioned this in some of my posts. It's certainly going to be politicalized and used as a means of sort of attacking status. And that's exactly what is being done. You can incarcerate people on the basis of your ability to do so simply, and a lot of people are like, oh, a lot of people mourn people dying in car wrecks. Well, there's no sort of grounds. In a car wreck, there's really few intangible elements to it, whereas this virus has very intangible elements to it. There's perceptive qualities that are based on sort of an evaluation, an assessment. You really don't, you hit a car, the dent is there, and whatever sort of injury is there. It's not something that, there's not a lot of intangibles unless you're, internal bleeding or something like that, which is not visible. Here you have this whole sort of realm that is easily exploited in terms of population control and status control. This guy, it doesn't matter if he was this, that, or the other thing. He's got a sniffle. And that's he's done. He's done. And there's such a broad range for sort of exploiting this. And it's almost because of that intangible aspect that it's become so profoundly, what do I want to say? It's so profoundly sort of psychological in a lot of ways, to really sort of identify where the threat lies. I have no idea, in a joking sense, it's really batshit crazy going on, bat soup, bat soup crazy. batshit crazy because people are like, where is this toilet paper thing coming from? I don't understand it to any, other than the zeitgeist, which has been making cartoons out of people's brains over the last 20 years. Other than the zeitgeist sort of like kind of making a joke, like bat shit, toilet paper. You need toilet paper for bat shit, and it's like Inception, somebody planted this fucking seed of crazy in people's heads 20 years ago, and they're just kind of waiting for this moment. Like, this is going to be very funny. Because people are going to go out and buy toilet paper because they're going to think shits is a problem, So yeah, but you didn't see that in China. Like, the toilet paper is not really a big deal here for the most part. Or it's not as sort of, it's certainly not prevalent in a public sort of, because people were prone to stealing it, from as far as I know. But people didn't run out and buy toilet paper here. They went out and you did go to the market and you sell things like Dettol and disinfectant. Those shelves were empty, and hand sanitizers was empty. But even those they've replenished those. But nobody went out and bought toilet paper. So I don't even know what that is, other than sort of a reference to, the inception of batshit crazy, and who's really batshit crazy and who's not really batshit crazy, And of course, they're always trying to like sort of, undermine the status of Americans as being the batshit crazy ones, I don't know how people get it. I don't know where that is, I have to agree with that assessment, when I see people buying toilet paper. Like, first of all, one of the most effective means of, like, one of the most effective sort of, and maybe Bill Gates would agree, one of the most effective sort of ways of dealing with fecal matter and defecation is like a bidet, or actually using water, so like step in the shower, wash yourself down, and towel off like you were showered before, and that paper actually makes it doesn't necessarily clean you. It just kind of takes, if you want to get rid of swamp ass, like if you ever experience swamp ass, stop using toilet paper and just wash yourself, because you'll find swamp ass disappears. It's really just kind of the residue around your anus of fecal matter, that's all that is. And if you wash it away, it goes down, and just pat yourself off as if you had taken a shower. You can always wash your towel. I don't understand it, I'm a firm sort of advocate of the bidet, I know the Japanese are also, they see the rationale in using such a thing. There's nothing really perverse about it, to be honest with you. Yeah, so, it's kind of a batshit crazy thing going on. What else? Star Wars first, I could do it. That was so awful. I sensed from the very outset that this was going to be politicized and was going to be used, it's just way too coincidental not to be seen as sort of like, yeah, we're going to use this as a political tool, mechanism for either side can use it, either side could say, this is going to be able to sort of affect the election in our favor or not in our favor, so, and it's just too obvious, not to see it in those terms, or discuss it in those terms, or sort of speculate on those terms. And the whole controversy about the stigma of, COVID, can't call it this, you can't call it that. That's all stuff you have to consider. We have to figure out where this thing started, how it started. You have to figure out what you have to define it under those terms, because it could be evidence of something far more sinister, and has much more to do, like I said, with just trying to establish status and not so much about nature a natural procedure. It could have much more. It could be a weapon, a social weapon. And and those speculations have to be considered strong and have to be. But right now, it's dealing with is dealing with the consequences of that. Is the priority. COVID, yeah. So like the name of it, yeah. So what if COVID is a pretty cool name? I think that's a cool name, And my name is COVID, You're so insensitive. You're insensitive bastard. I was the most popular guy on YouTube, My name was COVID. Now everybody hates me. I'm going to come up with a disease now. I'm going to come up with a disease and I'm going to name it after you. Blame it on you, It's just such goddamn children. Anyway, what else is going on? Watching movies. Oh, I got some new potato chips here. Ooh, check this out. And now, for whatever reason, there's a new potato chip here in Walmart here. This is avocado. Let's try this out here real quick. Boom. Knock it off. Avocado chip. You gotta love avocado. It's like mustard too. Like avocado and mustard. Yeah. We'll live without it. Yep, we'll live without it. So, avocado is great, but live without it. What else? Let's take a look at some movies I've been watching. Like I said, the movie drops have been pretty frequently here. Not just movies, but also documentaries. Close up all the windows. Lots of movies to watch now. Like every other day, there's maybe 10 more movies being added, and even sort of documentary series. What they do here is they'll drop an entire season. A lot of it's just kind of like nature programming. The David Attenborough narrated nature programs are very popular here. Also, Bear Grizzly, Man vs. Wild was very popular, and that's why you'll see the spoof of mine on in one of my playlists, Man vs. Leisure. Because he became all of his programming became so popular here. But anyway, so some movies I'm watching, everything I've watched is forgettable. The Mummy, forgettable. I never could buy Brendan Fraser as a Indiana Jones substitute. Just his character was more kind of frat boy humor, and I think Harrison Ford was a little bit more mature and a little more, I don't know, cynical or a little more sort of. It was a little more grounded in my reality, I guess, than the sensibility of Brendan Fraser. Not to say it's a fun film, and I like the effects in it were pretty cool when it first came out, and I really liked the third one with the Chinese, the statues there, the Xi'an statues there, the terracotta warriors. I like what they were doing there. I thought that was pretty interesting. Mummy, I just never really sort of bought into Brendan Fraser as a kind of a hero. Though it's not that I don't like his actor. I just don't think his personality fit that sort of role, the Indiana Jones role. But so basically forgettable. The Seven Adventures of Sinbad. There's a lot of these films here, and they're kind of like the kind of the CGI version of stop motion animation. Back in the day, or back in the 1950s. Not even the day. Back in the 1950s, you had all the great science fiction films, all these kind of B films. That did practical effects, explored practical effects and things like that, and essentially there's a whole there's a whole sort of genre of these these CGI films these days that kind of fill that same sort of role. You get them here. I always watch them just because I always remember when I was in Venezuela and taking a bus out to a small desert little town, and I always remember being on this bus, and all of a sudden the screens came down and they played this movie called Carnosaur. And I just remember like looking at some of the other passengers, and they were so sort of captivated by this Carnosaur film, and it was just this schlocky, cheesy thing. And I always remember that film though. It was kind of funny. That's really kind of where my initiation with these films started, and I still watch them these days. Still, you're always kind of like, man, I don't know if I could do that any better at this point. Jumanji, the second Jumanji there, forgettable. 2010 Moby Dick, once again, that's in that genre of sort of B films. Forgettable, but I really think it's a great idea. I kind of was intrigued by the idea. That could be extended on. Then, like I said, these are all just kind of David Attenborough nature films, Wild Brazil, Antarctica, End of the Earth, Planet Earth, Dynasties, all stuff. David Attenborough's, I basically watched the whole series. A lot of these films I'm just running in the background while I'm doing other things. I'm not really watching them. It's rare I actually sit down and watch, focus on one of these programs. I just kind of run them to make noise in the background. Some other films. Logan, this is one that I don't understand why it's popular. I don't understand. I can see to some extent just because it's so much better than what they've established in the X-Men franchise on film, but it does not in no way resembles the comic book. Like these X-Men films, they're just so focused on what I perceive as like sort of like, oh, this is sort of a this is symbolic of the homosexual sort of coming out and being sort of excluded from society. They're mutants, they have strength, and it's not that. It never was that. Superpowers, they were threatening because of their superpowers. I can see how it can be an analogy to that. I can see how people, and that certainly was something that I would say even the comic books sort of explored at certain stages. But if you were in the golden age of comic books in the early 80s, it was about having, they were basically raging heterosexuals, in the comic book. It was never about their sexuality. Their superpowers made them threatening in terms of what they could do. And so, but what they did, Hollywood, for whatever reason, took it like as, no, it's going to be always about that, we're not going to let anybody else sort of, because it's such a popular franchise. It's a very popular franchise, and so therefore it has a lot of status, and they're just going to continually undermine that status, unfortunately, with this franchise, by sort of making it it's really about just homosexuals, and it was never meant as that. It was sort of like trying to regard this idea of having superpowers, and certainly homosexuality is not a superpower. That sort of made them sort of that placed them on the outskirts of society or marginalized them. And so that's just always a constant part of these films, and it's just I don't like them. Ever since they started with Bryan Singer there, and this film Logan here, it's just stupid to me. Like I don't want to see Wolverine. You have Wolverine. I don't want to see a car chase. Like why? Like I don't want to see Wolverine driving a car. It's like what's the point of having what's the point of having this character? I never bought Hugh Jackman. Like part of Wolverine's character was that he was short and stubby. He was like kind of like the underdog. He was the guy who got picked on for being short all the time. And he was considered non-threatening because he was just kind of short and stubby, but he had these powers that he could defend himself with. And that was such an integral part of his character. And they, by casting Hugh Jackman, they're just like, nah, it doesn't matter. It's just about homosexuality. And it's not. And I don't like this film at all, Logan. I appreciate the fact that it's a little more serious in its tone, a little more darker in its tone, because the X-Men was always like that, especially in its heyday of John Byrne. But it's still a stupid story, especially like when they do like. I hated how they're always like, oh, we got to show his face. We got to always promote. We always got to get Hugh Jackman richer and more popular, and that's a big part of what we're doing here. And so they have him fight himself, in this film. It's like, God damn, I hated this film. And like a little girl, Wolverine, it's just a stupid idea. I don't want to see that. For the most part, you've made Wolverine gay. So I don't like Logan, and I don't see how other fans of the X-Men would like this film. And what else? I watched Major Movie Star, forgettable as like Logan to me is completely forgettable. It's as bad as like X-Men Origins. It's forgettable. The only thing that's making it memorable right now is that people like defend it, like as being decent, a good film. Major Movie Star is this Private Benjamin again. I just kind of watched it to see. Jessica Simpson, hopefully naked, but she wasn't. Outbreak. There's been like once I said, this is kind of they're jumping on the boat here. You're seeing a lot of these outbreak, these epidemic films popping up in the catalog. Outbreak is kind of. I don't know, just kind of a goofy sort of approach to this story about this, and certainly fear mongering. Angel is Falling, more fear mongering with stupid fucking Obama. Obama is a great president kind of crap. Red Planet, I thought this was kind of interesting because it's essentially The Martian before there was those films. Essentially, I didn't even know. I didn't know about this film, Red Planet. I didn't know it existed. I mean, it's a much more, it's a little more sci-fi than it's less fact-based than The Martian is, but it certainly explored that story before. I like The Martian. I thought that was pretty good with Matt Damon in it. That was a pretty good film. But this is kind of like the sensational. This is kind of the schlocky one, or the more adventure-based one, more fantasy-based one. And Transporter 2. Also, this also deals with this virus outbreak again, coincidentally enough. And if there's a China vlogger named Serpent Zier, and ever since I saw him, he always wears a suit in China. He was always trying to imitate this guy. This was totally his persona. It was just like, I'm going to pretend I'm the transporter in China. And there was a film about Jason Statham, protecting a Chinese girl, and every time I saw I was like, you could say two things, like this guy's walking around in a costume, like he's got balls for doing that, but like he's so ridiculous, like you don't walk down, like nobody here, it was so out of place. It was such an attention getter. It was like you were promoting the film, like going down into wet markets and saying like, oh, check out Jason Statham, come see the transporter, like, oh, oh God, I couldn't stand that. It was so pretentious. Anyway, that's about all. We're going to wrap it up here. I don't think there's anything else I want to talk about. Bring all the screens up, take a look through them. So things are going like they're pretty well normal here for the most part. There was that happened nearby. There was a hotel that collapsed in Xinjiang or Quanzhou. That was on the other side of the mountain. I haven't been over there. I'm not going to go over there and explore. it's just kind of silly to do that. Apparently, the news are saying it had something that the people there had been in contact with infected, possibly had the disease. Like I said, I don't have any intention of going over there and reporting on it and getting a scoop or anything like that. I don't really feel it's my job, or it's really important for me to go be the to get the scoop. But that's something that hit close to home. That's not very far from where I'm located. I looked it up on my. I mean, it's pretty far. It's on the other side of the mountain. It's not in walking distance by any means. But that was kind of a shocking news to hear that happen. Certainly, I hope everyone is okay. And I hope the people survive. It's a tragic thing to happen. So that's something in the news that actually kind of hits home close also. And that's about all. I guess I'll wrap it up here. So I just want to kind of check in. I don't know how much more I'm going to do these. Like I said, I don't really enjoy doing these things. I don't see a point to doing them if they're not going to pay me or monetize me, or just kind of if I see my work getting ripped off constantly and they're just going to pull the same sort of like, like here's a guy that we're going to target. I don't see a point to that. I'm here to make a better life for myself, and if this is going to make my life worse, I don't want anything to do with it. So I'm going to ease on out here. Y'all take it easy.